up. So again, I would have routine, but variety within that routine. I mean, can you imagine how mind-numbing it would be to come in and say, okay, true story. So I went into Clinica Band, not in New Mexico, not in Texas, not in Iowa, all right. So I went into Clinica Band, so the band director was in there, so he gets up, and he says, okay, the scale. I can't even say that without laughing, say, the scale. So in his hand, it was in his pocket like this, and so he's kind of looking at papers on his, you know what scale it was, it's the scale. I thought, that's every day. It's G minor. No. I was going, well, this is going to be a great clinic. This is going to be a great clinic. And I thought, those poor kids. And so he's about as engaged as they are. You can imagine how the scale sounded. They've been playing it all year. It sounded horrible, right? And so that's just one of those that's heartbreaking. I'm just so disappointed about that. So if you want a scale, there are many really nice scales, and those minor scales are lovely. And you can put them, okay, thirds, fifths, I mean, you can have them do all sorts of fun exercises. I mean, there's so many rehearsal techniques books that give great ideas about this, but don't be someone, at least my recommendation, don't come in and say, okay, the first 6 minutes are always the same. Yes, we always do this kind of work, but today I'm not quite sure what we're going to do. I'm not sure what he or she's going to pull on us, but it's going to be framed this, these 8 or 10 minutes we're going to do this. Then, yeah, we'll have a chorale, but it's not going to be the chorale. It's going to be a chorale. I'm not sure which one it is, and then we'll move through. So there is a routine. Students want to know what to expect when they come into your classroom. But they don't, they want to be stimulated. They don't want a mind-numbing, 100th performance of the scale. So think about how you go through and start that, and how you'll handle tuning. Again, I time out my rehearsals very specifically. I allot 5 to 8 minutes on what I call the development. I don't call it a warm-up, but it's a warm-up. It's got to be fancy, right? It's the developmental part of the rehearsal. When I was teaching public school, that part of the rehearsal was about 1/3 in length. Because I knew as a high school band director, I was in large part responsible for the development of executive skills. So we used the Nilo Hovey Advanced Techniques for Band method book. I love that method book. And the tips for band. I had 2 method books, again, because I wanted variety. I didn't want to have the same book. I wanted to have a couple of books, and we would just alternate those. But the Nilo Hovey was great because it had scale exercises, then it had technical studies to get those fingers moving. I knew as a high school band director, I was going to have to do that to some point. Some of my school students, Muleshoe and Levelland, not many of my students studied privately. A few at Levelland, not many at Muleshoe. It was just too difficult for them. Monterey, a lot of the students studied privately, so I knew somebody was working their fingers with them, but the majority of my students, no. Whatever technique development they were going to get was going to be in band. I don't do that at Iowa. My group is all music majors, so they're working fingers elsewhere. I work sound production. I work that part as an ensemble conductor. But when I was teaching, if I had a 60-minute rehearsal, at least 20 minutes are on fundamentals. My kids read really well, and they played really well because of the investment in fundamentals. That's important. I'm a scale person. We would start after long tones. We'd rip through all 12 major scales. They had to play the major scales. They had to know those front and back. So that, when I say 5 to 8 minutes, if I were teaching high school or middle school band, that warm-up segment, developmental segment, is going to be at least 1/3 of my rehearsal, and it will pay huge dividends down the road. So I like the F. Remington pattern that Mr. Seifert uses and all of that. I found from my experience, if I don't budget my rehearsal time, sort of like what we've talked about, and then daily, that I lose track, and it could really negatively affect the overall preparation of the piece. So I almost said maybe I go too far. I don't think I do. When I do, okay, I've got to have 20 minutes here, because it's like anything. You get in the weeds of a piece and say, oh, I need 10 more minutes, I need 20 more minutes. Well, where's that going to come from? That's going to come from the piece that you're not going to get to. And so I would encourage you to just think about how you manage your time. I don't think the answer is in a haphazard approach. I think there are many different ways. We see different successful models on how people plan their rehearsals. And you want to come up with a system that's good for you. But I think if it's just sort of a guess, and well, it doesn't really matter, I'm just going to kind of do this without a system, I don't think it's necessarily the best approach to planning the rehearsal. The rehearsal proper, let's talk about that. Again, I'm not getting into the nuts and bolts that I will after our break here in a minute, but this is the actual rehearsal proper. I think it's important here that, and I encourage my students and myself to be reflective practitioners. I spend a lot of time looking in a mirror as a teacher. I want to be a really good teacher for my students. And I get bummed out if I lead a poor rehearsal. That really bothers me. And I try not to let that happen very often. So I spend a lot of time thinking about, is my approach the best approach that for me and my students, or is there anything I can improve upon? That's sort of the point of this discussion this morning, is more or less getting you to think about what you do at your school now, and if it's the best, it's the best. Great. I expect for most of us, myself included, there's something I could do better. So what is it? Maybe, do you start 5 minutes late usually? 5 minutes times all those rehearsals again, or you're not quite organized, or yeah, I think I could get the room to look nicer, and just make a nicer environment for the band, or I could put the order on the board, a very simple thing like that. You think about, just reflect on what you do. I do this really well. This I don't do as well. I need to really insist that they use their pencils. So that's more of the point today, is to think about that. But I reflect a lot on what I do, and I ask myself questions like this. Do you interact with your students as they enter and exit the rehearsal room? I love this. I try to go, we have a commons area outside of our 2 rehearsal rooms. So I make a point of going early, grabbing all of my stuff, and going, and I harass the kids, or I'll visit with them. I like bantering with my students a little bit. We have a really good rapport, or I'll just say, how's that trumpet competition piece coming? Or or something. I really enjoy the non-musical. It could be, this person I knew had a study abroad in Spain. Tell me about that. So that's really important to me. I spend a lot of time with my students, but if I didn't do something like that, I wouldn't get to know them very well. Because I'm on the podium, we're working music, then they're gone. So I try to create those situations where I can go in and I can talk to them, or if I see them in the hallway, just stop them for a couple minutes and we'll just talk to get to know each other. Same thing when they exit. I make a point of finding different people and just visiting with them for a second. So how do you handle that interaction? I expect, if it's like when I taught public school, kids come in early in the morning, they hang out in the band room, it's their home base. And I miss that at college because it's a little bit different. So I try to substitute for that by just having some opportunities to visit with them. I want to know where they're from, what they're majoring in, it could be music, but okay, you want to be a trumpet professor, great. What kind of school? Or you want to play in an orchestra, or you want to be a high school band director, great. And learn that about them. I've impressed, he's not in the room now, but Mr. Seifert, he seems to know where all of his students went to high school. He knows their high school band director. He knows everything about them, and I would say that's an exception, at least of college teachers. They don't view their students that way. So that's important to me. So I wonder how you do that. What do you do to develop a healthy rapport with your students or not. I'm not the marching band director. I do go to marching band rehearsals, so I will arrive early and do the same thing with kids that I don't know very well. I'll just walk around and say, hey, how's the show going? What is it this week? Oh, it's Billy Joel. Great. You like it? Is it fun? Yeah.
I know at Tech, I know Keith Bearden could do that all the time. He, you know, you'd be in the middle of rehearsal, someone would go wrong, he could point at you and know exactly who you were, what you played, who your high school director was, everything on 400 people on that field. Even if it was, almost it was your first day there, he knew who you were.
See, that's
just amazing that he can do that with 400 kids every year.
And first rehearsal, so he'd say, Bob Bryan at Lamesa High School didn't teach you to march like that, Mark. Wow, that's powerful. And Myron Welch at Iowa was like that too, and he knew brothers and sisters and all of that. My goal by day one is to have those kids' names. I don't say, hey, you trumpet player. I will call all those students' names, but that was magical that he could do that.
Yeah, it always amazed me that it didn't matter if it was the first day or whatever. If you were in there, he knew who you were, who your director was, and all sorts of stuff.
So are you a Red Raider?
Well, I went there for a few years, then I went to South Plains College, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's a class guy, and that's a great example. Thank you for mentioning that. So that's the fun part of what we do. Are you an effective leader for the ensemble as evidenced by your podium presence, your confident problem-solving, decision-making, clear instructions, knowledge of the score, appropriate rehearsal techniques? The point of that is it's amazing what our body language communicates to our students. And how do you project yourself as a confident teacher? Or are you sort of meekish and uncertain, you don't have a plan? And I'm not talking about arrogance. I have no tolerance for arrogance in our profession. We all should be humble servants, and we're all servants of our students. And I think philosophically that's important. But they expect strong, capable leadership. And so how do you demonstrate that? Through your body language, your eye contact, you look at your students, do you use communication effectively, do you have a plan, do you practice excellent problem solving, decision-making skills? They rely on that of us. And you know that if you're rehearsing or you're on a trip or whatever, you are their leader and they look to you for answers. So I think it's important that we always present ourselves as prepared, as confident, and capable leader, someone they can trust. And I think that trust factor is really important. I think it takes a lot to earn the trust of students. It doesn't take much to lose that trust. It's sort of like a band program. It can take many years to build a band program and not much time at all to destroy one. And so it's the same idea with trust. And so we want to guard that very carefully. We want to make sure you're prepared. And if I have an off day with symphony band, which I do, my kids know that's an anomaly. I don't come in ill-prepared for rehearsals. It's like things just didn't click. I know if they had an off day, it's not always me. Sometimes the band, it just doesn't go. But you know what? We're going to come back at this in 2 days and we're going to be okay. So I think that trust goes both ways. Do you have strong eye contact with your students when you're conducting and speaking with them, or are your eyes usually buried in the score? Remember, the eyes are such an important form of communication. And for me, at the beginning of a rehearsal, I think I mentioned it a couple of times already, that's the most important piece to me. I want to check in with them. We're warming up. They don't have any music to be looking at. So I require to have their eyes, and I want to be sure that at least once during a rehearsal, I look at every single student in the eyes. I may not be able to get to all of them multiple times, but that one time, and basically what I'm conveying is I'm glad you're here. And sometimes, if I just had fun little banter with someone, I might kind of, twinkle my eyes or something. You'll see them grin, and so you can have that rapport with your students like that. But you get in the throes of a piece, it's hard to accomplish that. So I think that early part of the rehearsal is important, and I want to have good eye communication with each other. I also think of the idea of, I think it's much less about what we say really than how we say it. I think just in life in general, it's not so much what we say than how we say it. And if we're saying that with sincerity, with our eyes we're being genuine is so important, and it will have a tremendous impact. It does on my students. I think we have a great trusting relationship, and at least I think we do. So I think sincerity is really important. Do you exhibit energy and enthusiasm for what you're doing, or you are just essentially collecting a check? Now this is important. How do you view what you do? I assume because you're here on a Saturday morning that you're passionate about what you're doing. You want to come in and just hear some different ideas, a different perspective. Maybe you're being required to be here, I don't know, students. But no, you're not? Excellent. Well, bravo to you for being here. But it's this whole idea of, do you view what you do as a job, or do you view what you do as a passion? I fear that when, as music teachers, it becomes a job, then we've lost that, potentially we've lost that fire. That, you know, there was probably some spark in each of us that I want to be a band director, or I want to major in music. And for me, I was hooked as a beginning. We started in cornets in Lamesa. I was hooked from the beginning. Like, I dig this. I really like this. And when I got into the Lamesa High School band, it was a nice 4A band at that time. Yes, I want to do what he's doing. I want to be a band director. So I was hooked from the beginning, and I've tried to lead a very passionate, inspiring musical life because it means a lot to me, and I want to share that with my students. So I wonder, you know, among you, do you have that enthusiasm and passion? I think coming in with this idea of it's not so much what you say, but how you say it, passion can substitute for a lot of shortcomings. We may not have the greatest feedback for our students in rehearsal. Maybe we can't quite identify what's causing the problem. But if we're passionate about what we're doing, that's going to help a tremendous amount. And I think when we're in creative endeavors, that passion and enthusiasm are absolutely at the core of what we do. And you can tell there are people in our profession that are just collecting a check. And I wasn't just saying that sarcastically. They out there. They do the minimum. They get up, and there's no musical spirit, no musical soul to what they're doing. So I think you want to check that. Now I will say that I've been doing this for more than 30 years. It's difficult to maintain that. We get beat up in our profession. You know, where I get hammered is all the administrative requirements at Iowa. It's formidable what I have to deal with. It has nothing to do with my job of making music and my joy. I would assume many of you are in the same situation where you're dealing with bureaucracy and paperwork, and parents don't have to talk to them. I don't have to talk to them. I can't. I love that. Except I am the director of our summer music camp. So I have to interact with them there. So they're not helicopter parents anymore. I call them drone parents. And it's scary what I see. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful, but you can have fun with that. But that can take its toll on our musical spirit and wear us down such that there's just nothing left. It's like, I need to have some fire for the band rehearsal and passion. Where am I going to get that? We're going to have to find a way, because that's what it is at the heart of what we're doing. When you're conducting, there needs to be some fire and some passion, some enthusiasm. And if there's not, if we're just collecting a check, then we're just not going to make a difference. We're not going to make a difference in the lives of our students. We're not going to make a difference in the kind of music we're making. We won't be making music. So that's a big one. How do you avoid career burnout? And I know I have always been fully committed to what I'm doing from 6th grade. There was one time I kind of walked up to the edge of the cliff. I was approaching burnout, and it was, unfortunately, I was able to step back. And it was scary. It's like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. This was when I was in Wisconsin. It's like, it's just so much. So I found, you know, a way to kind of overcome that, but you have to keep that in check. Veteran teachers, you know what I'm getting at? I mean, am Am I the only one that ever felt that kind of pressure? Or so you have to find your own way of keeping a balanced life so that you can stay fresh. And but you want to ask yourself that. Is your conducting musical or utilitarian? I find that most conducting is not very inspiring. People will have their conducting course or two as a college student and not give much thought to the art of conducting. And that's, again, that's nonverbal communication. It's really important that we're able to convey musically through gestures. Do you follow a plan that is coherent and logically sequenced, or again, like I said, you just kind of wing it? And our students know when we're not prepared. I know I'm not going to fool my students. Those days I haven't had time to think about it. I walk in, things don't click well. They know that I'm just winging it. And like I said, I feel badly about that. But it sends a very dangerous signal to our students professionally. And so you want to just, are you the person that wings it more than not? Or are you the one like me that just every once in a while, I just can't get in there to get prepared? I hope it's the second, but you want to be careful about that. And you say, well, I can always stay ahead of my students. Yeah, probably, but they still know. Do you provide quick, clear, constructive comments? Do you have good pacing? Do you utilize your rehearsal time well? Again, that's reflective. Sometimes I tend to move really, really fast, so I've had to slow that down a little bit. Sometimes we can move too slowly. So you want to think, how's my pacing? Does it seem about right for my students, or do I need to make some adjustments? Do you usually provide your students with some type of feedback, or you just go through the let's play it again? I think it's important, if you're going to have your students play a section again, and give them a reason, or give them something to improve. There are times if we're reading something, I may go, and you know, they just need another go at it. They just need to have another chance.